and also Vidya going to be discussing this. Then on 25th of July, again, very, very interesting event. This is a discussion on roots and wings, building India's deep tech ecosystem. You all know Ashok Jhunjhunwala. He is one of the pioneer in IT Research Park. Along with we have Mr. Siddiqui, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary of Government of Tamil Nadu. We have Arun Jain, who is a founder of Intellect Design Arena. Then Santanam, former MD of Sengobain, and Santosh Mehrotra is the founder of DQ. So we have a very high panel to discuss on the very, very important subject. It's happening on 25th of June. Then again on 25th of June, we have a dealing with Hookah World. It's happening. It's one of our chapter activities. On Friday, again, we have dealing with another Hookah World. It's again happening at MMA Namakkal chapter. One more thing I want to add before we move to the most important awaited event for this evening is our flagship event of MMA. This year, we are starting the Platinum Jubilee of MMA is happening from 10th of July. 10th of July is the Platinum Jubilee celebration AGM. It's already, invite has already been shared with you. We got Mr. TV Narendran, President and Ayman, also CEO of Managing Director of Tata Steel, and Thomas Dose is the Managing Director of BMW. We have lined up some outstanding program for the Platinum Jubilee. Please don't miss it. We'll carry some commemorative gifts which you are planning, and I'm quite sure you will be really happy to preserve them as a part of your journey in the management movement, what is being done by MMA. So we look forward to your participation there too, and please block your diary. We already sent the invite to you. We keep reminding you, please do come, because we really showcase what we have done over a period. To be a 15-time #1 management association, we have done some 800 events and we got some 10,000 members. Really a great moment for us to share our joy and excellence, what you have done with your support. Then we also have 11, 15 number of events have been already planned. Coming to today's event, we are indeed privileged and honored to host this event. Discussion on the book India Out of Work, Rethinking India's Growth Story. Not only we are happy to launch this book with some outstanding author, and we also have equally an outstanding leader to come and discuss, and we always revere him with a thought leader, clear thinker, done everything. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hand together to welcome the distinguished leaders for this evening who are discussing the book. Let me have the privilege of welcoming and Mr. Santosh Mehrotra, author, visiting professor, Center for Development Studies, University of Bath, and also author of this book. Then Mr. Praveen Chakravarty, chief guest for this evening, member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha. Then we also have with us Kumaraswamy, PhD, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, author, columnist, commentator. We also have Mr. Kalaiyarasan, is associate professor, Madras Institute of Social Studies, and our own Giridhar Gopal is Honorary Secretary of MMA. May I request the dignitaries to please take the place on the dais. Ladies and gentlemen, a very, very warm round of applause to dignitaries. The format of the program for this evening is I will go to request my Honorary Secretary Giridhar Gopal to deliver the formal welcome address. Thereafter, author will make a brief presentation about the theme, and thereby we request the chief guest to formally launch the book and address the speakers, address the audience, and thereafter there will be a conversation between the author and other panelists led by Kalaiyarasan, is Associate Professor of Madras Institute of Development Studies. As usual, if you have any questions, we have a Mentimeter. Please scan the Mentimeter and share your questions. And all the viewers watching the program live, and please send your question to the number. And all the questions will be compiled, and their panelists agree to respond to all your questions. We only request you to place your questions and raise your questions which are relevant to the topic which are being discussed this evening. So now let me have the privilege of welcoming Mr. Giridhar Gopal, Honorary Secretary. Can I have the AV, please?
Mr. G. Giridhar Gopal, Honorary Secretary of Madras Management Association, is the Director and Chief Executive Officer of Addison and Company Limited. A mechanical engineer from CEG, Guindy, and CMA qualified professional, Mr. Giridhar Gopal brings over 3 decades of leadership, engineering, and business experience across Addison, LM Vanmox Diamond Tools India, and Grindwell Norton.
I now request Mr. Giridhar Gopal to deliver the formal welcome and opening remark, please. Over to you, Mr. Giridhar.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome all the faculty members, students and guests from MITS members and guests of MMA, representatives of our partner organizations, and everyone who has joined us today, both in person and online. Now let me welcome the distinguished guests, Mr. Praveen Chakravarty, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, Professor Santosh Mehrotra, author and visiting professor, Center for Development Studies, University of Bath, Dr. V. Kumaraswamy, author, columnist, and commentator, Dr. A Kalaiyarasan, Associate Professor, Madras Institute of Development Studies. A heartfelt welcome to all of you, sirs. Before introducing the topic, for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with MMA, I would like to briefly introduce MMA. MMA was established in 1956, as evolved today, is the largest management association in the country with over 8,000 members spread across 12 chapters in Tamil Nadu and Pondicherry. MMA has been awarded the Best Management Association in the country for 15 times in a row, including the year 2024-25. Now, to the topic. We gather this evening not merely to launch a book, but to reflect on a question that lies at the heart of India's future. India stands at a remarkable moment in its journey. For the past 3 decades, our progress in economic reforms, entrepreneurship, innovation, and digital infrastructure positioned us among the world's fastest growing major economies. Yet, growth alone is not the destination. Its true value is in the opportunities it creates, the capabilities it builds, and the lives it improves. It's always told that India's greatest strength is its demographic dividend. But all will agree that young population becomes a national asset only when it is educated, skilled, healthy, productive, and empowered to contribute meaningfully to the economy. This raises there are 4 important questions. Can we create opportunities to match the aspirations of the youth? Can technology such as AI become engines of inclusion, or will it work as displacement? Can economic growth will help social mobility, greater women participation in employment, and the opportunities that reach every section of society? Above all, can every young Indian feel that he or she has a genuine stake in the nation's future? This question will always linger in our minds. The decades ahead will determine whether India simply becomes a large economy or truly becomes a developed nation. The difference will not be measured by GDP alone, but the quality of opportunities available to all our people. That's why this book and the conversation it seeks to spark are both timely and important. There's one thought I would like to leave with you. The future of India will not be determined merely by how fast our economy grows, but by how deeply our ideas grow. No doubt, economic progress will certainly create possibilities, but only ideas determine how those possibilities are used. In an age of overflowing information, only thoughtful books such as this and informed debate become more valuable than ever. The book India Out of Work contributes to that essential conversation that will challenge all of us to think more deeply on the choices that will shape India's future. I take this opportunity to thank MITS, my colleagues on the managing committee, our partner organizations, distinguished invitees, and viewers joining us from different parts of the world for being part of this important occasion. I'm confident that this evening will not only celebrate the launch of a book, but will also stimulate meaningful reflection on defining questions of a time. I wish you all an engaging, insightful, and thought-provoking evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Giridhar Gopal, for your formal welcome address. Now we will have the present thing of Mr. Santosh Mehrotra will be addressing on the theme of the book and making a presentation. Before I call him up to speak on this book and the subject, can I have the...
Professor Santosh Mehrotra is a distinguished development economist, author, and visiting professor at the Center for Development Studies, University of Bath, formerly Professor of Economics at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. A PhD in Economics from Cambridge University, Professor Santosh has held senior roles with the UN, UNICEF, the Human Development Report Office, and India's Planning Commission, contributing to the 11th and 12th 5-year plans. Professor Santosh has authored 14 books, with works translated into several languages and consults regularly with ILO, ADB, UNDP, UNESCO, and UNIVO.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my proud privilege to present to you Professor Santosh Mehrotra to share his insights and thoughts on the book which he has authored. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you. I operate it myself?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so why don't you load it?
Yeah, I already loaded.
Okay.
Just open.
You want to take me off? You'll take me off, right? So, yeah, I'll do that. Thank you very much indeed, Group Captain Vijay Kumar, and thank you to the Madras Management Association and the Madras Institute of Development Studies for inviting me to share my thoughts with you. I'm very grateful that the first launch of the book is taking place in Chennai. The book was released only a month ago in Delhi, and the book has not yet been released and launched in Delhi. So I'm very, very grateful to you for bringing me together, and grateful also to my good friend Praveen Chakravarty, the newly anointed Rajya Sabha member from Tamil Nadu, which I want to congratulate him about. Mr. Giridhar Gopal, thank you very much for inviting me. Dr. Kumaraswamy, Dr. Kalai, my young friend. So let me begin by saying a few words about I won't speak for more than 20 minutes and leave much of the discussion to when you ask questions. The book is motivated by the challenge that actually Mr. Gopal was talking about. The challenge is not just that India should be growing fast. We are told that India is growing fast, but is it generating the number of jobs that India needs to generate? That's the reason why I begin by saying that, first of all, there is an economic crisis, a structural economic crisis, which I will speak about. The jobs are not being created at the rate at which they need to be created. At the same time, I argue that the education sector is generating young people who are by and large unemployable in large numbers. And the employment crisis, which is the third crisis, so I call this a polycrisis of the economy, of the education system, and of employment. The polycrisis and the employment crisis is a result essentially of the economic and structural crisis, slowing growth and the pattern of growth, and the systemic education crisis. That's why the book argues that we need to rethink India's growth story. So, in a sense, you're already getting the structure of my presentation, so I'm going to move very rapidly through these three themes very, very quickly. So we are constantly given the narrative that India is growing very fast, that India is supposedly the fastest growing large economy in the world. That's already being questioned whether India is the fastest growing large economy. I won't go into the details. If you ask me why, I will explain. But for the moment, you have to go by my word, which is what we argue, that if we are going to become Vikasita Bharat, India has to grow at nothing short of 8% per annum. And we are actually, over the last 10 or 12 years, despite supposedly growing fast, we've only been growing at about 6.2% per annum. That means we are still already 1.8 percentage points lower than what's warranted to become Viksit Bharat. And we've got to grow at 8% per annum annually for 22 to 25 years. Please try and understand that. Moving on, if we don't, then we will run up against what is called the middle income trap. So, and please appreciate the following, that none of the international agencies, independent international agencies, the World Bank, IMF, none of them project India's growth will be greater than 6.5% at least until 2030. That suggests quite clearly that the growth rate will be still way below the warranted rate, the 8% that we are talking about, which we estimate. But the tragedy is that we are not generating enough jobs, partly because we are not growing fast enough. This is in complete contrast to the situation that prevailed between 2003-04 and about 14-15, when we were growing at 8% per annum, on average, over a 10 or 11-year period, and we were generating 7.5 million new non-farm jobs each year. Please keep that in mind in the background as we move forward. Please also never forget that we might be the fifth or sixth largest economy in the world, but our per capita income puts us at 147th rank. 147th rank in the world. So let's just keep that in mind. We are the only low middle income country among the G20 countries. All others are high income or upper middle income countries. So at the same time, please appreciate that the data is demonstrating beyond a shadow of doubt, that wealth and income inequality in a highly socially unequal country as it is, has actually increased sharply, so sharply that India is now, in terms of wealth and income, one of the most unequal countries in the world, comparable to countries like Brazil and South Africa. They are the most unequal. We are now, as Piketty says, more unequal than 100 years ago under the British Raj. Just keep these facts in mind. This is a process that has been going on for the last 40 years. So, when I say that the economy is in a structural crisis, what am I saying? I am saying the following, that there was until 2015-16, a process of structural change taking place. Structural change essentially means the following, that as per capita income grows, you also have the following two processes going along. One process involves a change of the structure of the economy away from agriculture dependence towards industry and services, and also a change in the structure of employment away from agriculture into industry and services. Why? Because with development, people want to move out of agriculture, they want to move to higher productivity activities in industry and services where incomes are higher. And if that happens, that's what drives the per capita income forward. Now, you would expect, therefore, that in that process, the contribution of manufacturing, which is the dominant part of industry, will be rising as a proportion of GDP, right? But look what this graph is showing. For 25 years after the economic reforms began, all the way until 2011-12, that's the first point that you're seeing at the beginning. You have a laser pointer? If you give me the laser pointer, the first data point there is 2011-12. It's at 17% or so. After that, it systematically declines. The contribution of manufacturing actually falls, and in the year 23-24, which is that last data point, you are seeing that it falls to 14.3%. Never in India's history has manufacturing share in gross value added, from 17 to 14% in the year 23-24. Never in India's modern economic history has the share of manufacturing to gross value added actually declined to this level. And at the same time, please appreciate, manufacturing employment falls in absolute terms, which I will show you now in this graphic, in this table. Please look at the following. Manufacturing, share of workers, manufacturing, number of workers. In 11-12, what you're seeing is 60 million workers, and that number drops all the way to 55 million in 17-18. That's the year, by the way, that the open unemployment rate in the economy was supposed to be already reached the highest level in 45 years. The highest in 45 years in 17-18, well before COVID. Please appreciate. Moving on, it has caught up it has caught up to about 63 million or so just over what it was 10 years earlier. So in other words, share of GVA falling in manufacturing, despite all the talk about Make in India, about performance-linked incentive, etc. But it's not just that. It's much worse than that. This is the opposite of the structural change that I was talking about. What is the other dimension of this? It's the following, that in the last 5 years, you've seen not only the share of agriculture go up, you want to see with development the share of agriculture dropping, the absolute number of workers in agriculture dropping. What are you seeing here? The numbers were dropping from 2004-05 when it was 269, it drops to 200 million, right? 200 million in the year 2018-19. And then look what happens. In the next 4 or 5 years, it goes up by 80 million, from 200 to 280 million. The absolute opposite of structural change. That's why I call it the reversal of structural change. This is called structural retrogression. This is not Vikas. This is the opposite of Vikas. Okay? So on the one hand, manufacturing coming down. On the other hand, agriculture going up. Moving on. So in other words, point one, big point one, is that the structural economic crisis is that manufacturing coming down and agriculture employment rising. The government actually had the audacity to tell us that in the last 4 years we've created 8 crore jobs or 80 million jobs. What they didn't tell you, those jobs were in agriculture. That's the opposite of what you want to see happen. Our educated young don't want to be working in farming. Our educated girls are not going to go back to agriculture. They want to get the hell out of agriculture, not work in agriculture. But look what's happening. Moving on, one last sentence about this. Never in the history of the world, let alone of the history of India, have 80 million workers been added to agriculture in a matter of 4 or 5 years. Moving on, what is the meaning of this? The implication of this is the following. That when jobs were growing at the rate of 7.5 million per annum, when we were growing at 8% per annum, right? You recall until 14-15, as I was saying, then real wages were rising. Look at the numbers here. 4-5 to 11-12, here are the numbers. This is what? Real wages in rural India. They were rising when jobs were rising in the non-farm sector. Then what happens? From 17-18, this is what happens with real wages. Flat real wages. For 10 years, you've seen flat real wages. This is in rural India. Moving on. In urban India, this is the situation in urban India. Because non-farm jobs were growing in an earlier period, I was saying real wages were rising, and that's exactly what you're seeing here. You're seeing real wages rising for regular salaried casual workers as well as the self-employed earnings, right? And then real wages stagnate. So on the one hand, jobs stop growing. On the other hand, real wages stagnate over a long period of time. What is going to be the implication of this? Because this is what happens when non-farm jobs don't grow. Real wages stagnate. That's what happens when structural change, which was going on, is actually reversed. This is what happens. And this is what the data is showing. Moving on very rapidly in the interest of time, please appreciate that as the young join in larger and larger numbers looking for work after getting much better educated, what we've seen in the last, let's say 20 years happen is a massification of higher education. I can tell you the numbers, I don't have the time to go into that at any length. If you ask me, I'll tell you the numbers. What do I mean by massification of higher education? With gender parity, please appreciate. So obviously these young are not looking for work in agriculture, they're looking for work outside agriculture, but the non-farm jobs are the ones which I was saying are not growing. So what are the 4 demographic groups which need to be provided jobs? Firstly, are of course the 15 to 29-year-old youth. Some 6 to 7 million at least are entering the labor force each year. We have to provide jobs, non-farm jobs for them. Within this group, of course, is a very large number of girls, because girls' enrollment in secondary education got universalized by about between 2010 and 2015. For secondary education, please appreciate, the result was upward pressure in higher education, and higher education today, not only the enrollment rate has risen to 29%, higher education, in a matter of 10 years going from 11%, it's happened with gender parity. And that's a fantastic achievement, but obviously these girls are going to look for non-farm jobs. But guess what? India has had the lowest female labor force participation rates in the world, comparable to those found in Saudi Arabia and in Yemen. Saudi Arabia and in Yemen, and not improving, okay? These are all girls who have aspirations of finding work, obviously, in urban areas, in industry and modern services. You, living in Tamil Nadu, have to be very proud of the fact that 40% of all factory working women in the country are in Tamil Nadu. Okay, yes, you can clap at that, but the point is, that's just still not good enough. Even for Tamil Nadu, because had it been good enough, you wouldn't have voted out a party which has been in power for the longest time. And who has voted them out? It's the young, whose aspirations are different, because obviously they've all gotten very... Can you imagine if the young in your state have new aspirations and are voting accordingly? Can you imagine what the situation in the rest of the country is? Because they have gotten educated even in the rural areas of Bihar, UP, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. I can assure you, I'm a UP wala, and I can tell you that that's the truth. Okay, moving on very rapidly in the interest of time. There's, of course, the stock of those who are landless and small marginal farmers. We already know that in 2019, we already had 200 million workers in agriculture who were contributing only 16 to 17% to GDP, because that's the contribution of agriculture. We've now, thanks to the government's policy shocks to the economy, added 80 million workers to agriculture in the last 4 or 5 years. We've gone from 200 million to 280 million. And they're still contributing only 16% of GDP. That means we've got to pull out all these 80 million of workers out of agriculture, plus pull out more after we've taken the level of agriculture employment to 200 million. We have no choice but to pull them out, because if we don't, agricultural incomes will stagnate. If they stagnate, where will the demand for non-farm goods come from? So that's the stock of those who have to be pulled out of work into non-farm. Particularly this group needs to be accommodated in construction work. The third group, of course, consists of the stock of unemployed. The stock of unemployed in 2012 was only 10 million. This is the openly unemployed. I'm not talking about the underemployed. Okay? Not talking about those who've fallen out of the labor force and stopped looking for work. That number is already by 2019 tripled from 10 million to 30 million. So we have to employ those. When you take into account all these people, we have to generate nothing short of 11 to 12 million new non-farm jobs each year. And that cannot happen unless we grow at least 8% per annum. But how many jobs are we creating in the non-farm sector? Only 6 million. That's half of what the number that we need to create. That's why the open unemployment rate of youth is extremely high. Guess what it is? Here is the data. The youth unemployment rate, this is showing unemployment among the educated and trained. These are numbers going from 93, 94 all the way to 23, 24. Focus only on the 23, 24 number, let us say, and 17, 18 number. That's the most recent period, okay? Graduates. We are most interested, of course, in this room for graduates. Look at the number. It used to be in 11, 12, 20%. It went to 36%, even if it's down. And it's down only because many of these graduates are girls who have actually finding that they're not finding work and have actually joined agriculture. That's what they're showing. Agriculture is not work. And they've joined agriculture as unpaid family labor. Please try and appreciate this. Unpaid family labor. They're not remunerated. So this is what's happening to the unemployed. In the interest of time, I'm going to really move on. As though all this is not bad enough, the quality of our workforce is demonstrated in this last column here. This is the Indian workforce by level of education. In 23-24, already, 23% nearly were still illiterate. Another 19% only had primary education, and another 21% only had middle education. What does that mean? About 62% of our total workforce who are already working, they have less than 8 years of education. That's the nature of the workforce that our education system so far has created. This is one very important reason why I argued earlier on that the education system is still in crisis. Now, why this education crisis? I don't have the time to talk about it, so I'm going to move very rapidly to what a growth strategy could be, and this is my last slide, and I will stop, because I don't want to leave you with in a state of pessimism, because it is not that it is not possible to actually get out of this structural crisis and the jobs crisis. And we have no choice but to get out of it, and get out of it very fast, because we have only 15 years left for our demographic dividend to end. Let me just underline what that means, that statement means. Why is the dividend seen as such a once in a lifetime in the nation's history opportunity? Because this is the period in the life of any nation when the share of the working age population is rising and the share of the dependent population is falling. Dependents are under 15 and over 64, okay? The point is, this period is about to end in 15 years. Why? How do I know? We estimate this. You'll find all the numbers crunched in the book. But listen to this number. Currently, half of our workforce is already at the age of 45, over 45. That means in 15 years, they will be at retirement or beyond. Half. The implication is that we have to find pensions for them, death and disability insurance for them, social insurance that people in this room take for granted, but we are only 10% of the workforce. 90% of our workforce is informal, without any social security. And please don't tell me that Vikasit Bharat will have 90% of its workforce which doesn't have social security. Because every Vikasit Desh, every developed country has 100% social security. Everyone has social security. If we don't start working on it today, there is not a hope in hell that we will ensure that 0% of all our workers have social security. That means we might become an aging society, an elderly society, and like the Chinese leaders are saying today, Europe became old after they became rich. We have become old without becoming rich. The Chinese leaders whose country is at 2.5 to 3 times our per capita income today, and it will be much higher even now. Their dividend is over. Are we going to allow our dividend to be over? And yet, we have 90% of our workforce which is living longer because they will have higher longevity, life expectancy is rising, and we are spending only 1.3% of GDP on health and practically nothing on social security. What will happen to the elderly? Will they have to work until they drop dead? Therefore, we have no choice but to move towards this threefold strategy for jobs and I'm going to end with this slide. I have really crossed the 20 minutes that I was intending to speak. If you want me to spell this out, it's spelled out in the book. But let me just spell it out in 3 sentences. One, we have no choice but to invest in our agriculture in a way that we bring our growth rate of agriculture above the 3 to 4% that it has never exceeded in the last 75 years. Because that and that alone, the rise in productivity in agriculture will ensure that incomes will rise in agriculture, and as a result of which, demand for non-farm goods will grow, manufacturers will grow. So Tamil Nadu will become the manufacturing superpower of India and provide the goods for those manufactured goods for the rest of the country. But why just Tamil Nadu? Why not Telangana and Karnataka and the other states of India? But that happens only when rural demand increases. There is a whole strategy there in the book. I can't talk about it. Secondly, in 35 years, India has not had an industrial policy or a manufacturing strategy. Had we had one, our manufacturing contribution to gross value added would not have been at 17%. That was good enough. In the last 10, 12 years, it has come down to 14%. So clearly, we need a manufacturing strategy. We cannot simply be dependent upon our IT services exports. We cannot go from an agriculture-driven economy to be a services-driven economy and jump over or leapfrog over a period which China rode the wave of. All the East Asians rode the wave of. That's why they actually realized the demographic dividend, which we are failing to do. So the book spells out 7 components of an industrial policy. And finally, in the services sector, we think that our IT services is going to solve the problems. I'm not going to answer why it is not. And AI is only a very small part of the answer of that. But what we don't have today in the services sector is public investment in health, in education, in the state police, and in judiciary, which can create millions of jobs. Why do I say this is essential? Because we have per 1,000 population better number of government officials relative to total population in Tamil Nadu and southern states. But that's not the point. On average in India, we are literally one-fourth of the level of public officials, even in China or other emerging market economies, and only 1/10 that of rich countries. So, and please understand, in your state and in every state, health, education, and the police account for 85% of all state government officials. And half of those posts are vacant. No state, no country can actually continue to underfund its health, education, and the police and expect to become Viksit Bharat. Let me stop at that point. The argument goes well beyond that. I'd encourage you to have a look at the book. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Professor, for your thought-provoking insights. Now we come to the most awaited moment for the evening and the launch of the book and address by a chief guest. May I request you please do the step forward, do the honor to launch the books. Can I have the books, please? It's a time to listen to our chief guest this evening. Before I call him, may I have
Mr. Praveen Chakravarty is a member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, from the Congress Party and serves as All India Chairman of the party's Professionals Wing and Data Analytics Departments. An alumnus of BITS Pilani and Wharton, Mr. Praveen has worked with IBM, Microsoft, and on Wall Street before joining public service through the Dr. Manmohan Singh government's Unique Identity Program and Prime Minister's Skills Mission. A visiting professor in political economy at Ashoka University, Mr. Praveen is a key member of the Congress Economic Think Tank, Manifesto Drafting Team, and an active writer, sports enthusiast, classical music aficionado, and voracious reader.
This is my proud privilege to request Mr. Praveen Chakravarty, Member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha, to deliver the Chief Guest address. Mr. Praveen Chakravarty.
Good evening, Ellorukkum Vanakkam. Captain Vijay Kumar of the Madras Management Association, my good friend Professor Santosh Mehrotra, Mr. Giridhar Gopal, Dr. Kalaiyarasan, I know Dr. Kumaraswamy is not here, there he is, and members of the MMA that are assembled here, a very good evening again. First, I remember the last time I was here, and I think the Captain Vijay Kumar would remember it, it was 2019, just before the Parliament election. It was for a book launch. It was the launch of a book of Mr. P. Chidambaram. And I remember we had a very similar pessimistic discussion back then about, but not about the state of the economy, but about inequality. Of course, Mr. Chidambaram and I also served on the Manifesto Committee at that time, and so we went on to draft a few policies for the manifesto, but we didn't get a chance to implement them. I am here more as an economist and less as a politician, but though you cannot disconnect the two, and it's also a more comfortable avatar for me, the one of an economist. But I actually want to start with making sure we understand what the verdict in the Tamil Nadu Assembly elections recently was. The message from voters. And that message was very loud and clear to all of us politicians, which is the youth of the state said we reject the old order. And that includes all of us. All of us. We said we do not believe, have confidence in establishment politics. We reject the old order. We want to try something new, and we want to give something new a chance. Essentially, they voted for a complete overhaul. And that's an important message that we must understand, imbibe. And now as an economist, I would say that that message is true even for the field of economics. The field of establishment economics that Santosh and I belong to is being questioned. Why are the youth so disenchanted? They're disenchanted with politics, but what they are seeing as not working is because the traditional economic thinking is not working. And we have to accept that. We have to acknowledge that. Unless we accept and acknowledge that, we will not be able to find solutions. And why is it not working? with the new government in place, and today happens to be the birthday of our Chief Minister as well, I'm not sure I should be launching a book that says India out of work, which is not a very good message for youth that are perhaps a little bit more optimistic now because of the change here, where they say that they've rejected the old order. And now we are here talking about India out of work. And Santosh just told us how we may never get back to work if we don't do a lot of good things. So I have to contest some of those things. But India out of work sounds very ominous, sounds very scary if I'm in my 20s. And that is primarily because things have changed so fast, so rapidly, that both politics and economics have not kept up. The traditional view in economic theory was the idea of GDP growth. So if there's a new finance minister of India or even the state of Tamil Nadu, you ask them, what is your goal? What is your objective? The traditional answer would be, we will grow at double digit, or we will grow at 8% or 12% or 14%. But why that growth? That growth in itself has no meaning. Because the traditional theory was that growth, which is an increase in production and output, meant an increase in workers, which meant an increase in jobs and incomes. So it was the classic trickle-down theory that we would associate in economic thinking. And hence this obsession with GDP growth. But somewhere down the line, that link broke. The facts and the data is very clear. This is RBI data. For every 1 percentage point of GDP growth, the number of formal sector jobs that it generates has halved every decade, from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s to the 2010. We're no longer creating, we could be growing at 10%, 12% for whatever we care. But does it translate into jobs and incomes for people, for our youth? And it does not. That's the brute, harsh, ugly truth. So then we have to ask the question, why are we so obsessed with with GDP growth? It does not translate to jobs for obvious reasons, which is technology. So today, we can get the same amount of output, same amount of growth with far fewer workers than we did in the 80s or the 90s. So then are we not chasing the wrong goal? If we keep talking about 8% growth, double-digit growth, 12% growth, what does it matter? And this is where when I say the link between GDP and jobs is broken, it also means the link between politics and economics is broken. Because in politics, what people want, what our voters want, in democratic politics at least, are jobs and incomes and prosperity. I can't give them an answer saying we are growing at 12%. And to be fair, this is not just an India problem or a Tamil Nadu problem, it's a problem all over the world, but we are the largest country on the planet. We have the largest workforce on the planet. We have the largest workforce, largest number of people coming into the workforce, and we don't have jobs for them. And we can't get jobs. We don't have an answer for how to get jobs. And that is what I would urge everybody, at least the experts, to spend more time thinking about. When I remember when I was in government and when we were also trying to come up with solutions or proposals for our manifesto, the one thing we would always struggle with is we did not have good data on the labor market, as we say in economics. I must absolutely congratulate Santosh and his co-author for putting an end to that complaint. It's an excellent book with so much rich data. The data is not very good looking, but that's the truth. But the data, and I think Santosh showed that one table, which was very striking for me. In the last 25 years, the share of people in agriculture has come down. So where did they go? Where did the remaining people in agriculture go? They didn't go into manufacturing. Looks like they also did not go into services, as we call it. There was a category which I didn't quite understand, Santosh, which said non-manufacturing, non-services.
Construction, mostly construction.
So, and that is what seems to be growing. And now, of course, gig work. All of this is before we've uttered the word AI, artificial intelligence. With AI, whether we like it or not, it's here. It's a reality. So if artificial intelligence is now taking away jobs, is bound to take away jobs from the service sector, which is the traditional idea was that people went to university when we moved from the era of muscle, which was agriculture, where people needed strength and hunter-gatherers and agriculture, to then we moved to the era of hands, which was manufacturing. From there we moved to the era of the mind, which was university degree and going into service sector jobs. Suddenly AI is saying, I'm removing the human out of the mind. I don't need a human. A machine can do what a McKinsey consultant, I'm sorry if there are any consultants here, but what a McKinsey consultant can do. A McKinsey consultant or a Wall Street analyst they've probably spent lots of money, 22, 23 years of their life getting themselves educated to go into a job which now AI says, I will do. Remember, the AI cannot take away the barber's job yet. We still need the barber. And we still all need haircuts and hairstyles. But the AI is taking away Wall Street analyst and McKinsey. So what does this do? What does this even mean? How do we even look at the future? So if AI is taking away McKinsey consultants and Wall Street analysts, then why is a university degree valuable any longer? More importantly, why is a McKinsey consultant paid 100 times more than a barber? A McKinsey consultant can be replaced. A barber cannot be replaced. Yet, at least. Or a gig worker or someone who delivers what we want, they cannot be replaced yet. But a McKinsey consultant is gone. So why, if the demand for McKinsey consultants go down, and then what happens to their wages? Are we going to see an era where the barber is getting paid more than a McKinsey consultant? These are very fundamental questions that we need to answer. Very fundamental. And I'm afraid these are not the questions that our traditional policy fraternity in the country is engaging with. But these are the questions we as politicians get on the field. If the state of Tamil Nadu has voted for a change, there is expectations. The youth have led this change. They have expectations, and rightfully. What is our answer going to be for them? And I can pretend as a politician that I have all the answers, but the honest truth is that we don't. But my concern is even more. Are we even thinking about these things? And which is why when I said I will contest a few of Santosh's solutions, what I meant was I would start by questioning these things. Because an 8% growth, I am not convinced is going to create the same number of jobs that we thought it would. Or a 10% growth or a 12% growth. And I'm worried we may be going down the completely wrong path if we keep chasing that growth. And we in Tamil Nadu, we in Chennai know this because just a few kilometers from here in Sri Perumbudur and Kanchipuram, we assemble 1/3 of the world's iPhones. 1/3 of the world's iPhones get assembled here. How many people are employed there? It's very good that we are assembling iPhones. It's excellent that we have manufacturing expertise. It's excellent, and Tamil Nadu is by far the best state in the country for this. But if machines are going to do all the jobs, what are the youth of Tamil Nadu that are coming out of colleges going to do? And hence, I can still say by assembling 1/3 of the world's iPhones, the state GDP growth is whatever, 15%, 20% nominal, 15% perhaps nominal growth. But that does not answer the question that the youth want, which is, where is my job? And so I want to end by really urging a lot of the policy experts, economists, politicians, and people in this room to think hard about this question. How can we actually generate jobs, knowing very well that the old order does not work? The old economic order. Just as the old political order did work, the old economic order also does not work. So we just have to completely restructure our thinking and see what we can do as solutions. Of course, the one solution that everybody talks about is universal basic income, which is giving money to people. For those that have followed me in the media, I'm very vocal about our debt levels, not just in the state level, but even at the federal government level. But what's even more worrying is state government debt. So we can talk about giving money, we can talk about skilling and investing in education and quality of work, but where is the money for it? And our debt situations are becoming unsustainable. Like I've said, 65% of revenues of the state of Tamil Nadu go into just servicing debt and committed expenditure. So we have issues to think about. I don't want to sound scary, but I hope that at least I am trying to impress upon you that we are thinking about these things. We understand what the harsh, ugly truth is. We are thinking about these things. We will, and I'm sure if we all put our heads together, we will find solutions. It's not as bleak, but it does call for a completely radical rethink. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your thought-provoking thing. So many questions raised. I hope we'll find some answers in the interest of our state and the nation. And the memento. Oh, this is a book. Again, we give you a book to read. Sir. It's published by MMA. Go book of everything. Look. Oh, sir. Can you send a copy to? He was not there when the book launch was there. So you can also join. He was not there. So he. We want to take a picture with you. Action replay. He's a book published by MSA. Okay. Interesting. All videos of it. Come, Prof. Hari?
I apologize. I have to go to another meeting. Sorry.
Hari, see. Now, I think two special invitees will be joining the author for a conversation led by Kalaiyarasan. Can I have the AV of Mr. Kalaiyarasan and Mr. Praveen? Mr. Kumaraswamy.
Dr. B. Kumaraswamy, PhD, MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and FCMA, is a seasoned corporate leader, board professional, author, columnist, and policy commentator with nearly 4 decades of experience across manufacturing, financial services, international business, strategy, risk management, and corporate governance. Dr. Kumaraswamy has served on the boards of several companies and played key roles in restructuring, turnaround management, capital mobilization, cross-border ventures, and international financing with leading global institutions. A respected thought leader on economic policy, finance, industrial development, governance, and business strategy, Dr. Kumaraswamy has authored over 100 articles and books including Making Growth Happen in India and Weird Adventures, Uncommon Lessons. Dr. A. Kalaiyarasan is Associate Professor of Development Studies at the Madras Institute of Development Studies and Visiting Research Fellow at King's College London. Dr. Kalaiyarasan has held academic and research positions with Niti Aayog, ISID Delhi, Brown University, Harvard University, and IIT Bombay. Dr. Kalaiyarasan's work focuses on the political economy of development, fiscal federalism, and structural inequalities in the global south, and includes the co-authored Cambridge University Press publication The Dravidian Model, Interpreting the Political Economy of Tamil Nadu.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have very, very high-profile panel going to be a very lovely discussion. Now I request Dr. Kalaiyarasan to lead the conversation with the author and Mr. Kumaraswamy. Over to you, Dr. Kalaiyarasan.
Prof Santosh Mehrotra, Mr. Praveen Chakravarty, and Mr. Kumaraswamy, Mr. Giridhar, and ladies and gentlemen, and really it gives me an immense pleasure to be here, and also very excited for 2 reasons. One, it's also going to be a tough job for me, because the author of the book happened to be my professor and a mentor. So it is very difficult for me to critically reflect on the book, but still, because the skills that I learned from him, I'm going to reflect on a bit on that. And the co-author, Professor Jajati, also happened to be my close friend. So it's really, at one level, it's a very honor. On another level, it's also a tough job to moderate. And I was thinking, how do I introduce this book to students? If for a master's student, that is a very important book. In few lines, how one should introduce this book. I think I would introduce this book in the following way. Besides the critical comments made by Mr. Praveen Chakravarty and the presentation made by Professor Santosh Mehrotra, I would say simply in 2 lines as to why India has not been able to generate jobs and wages for majority of population. In the sense, it's not that it's that the other countries could not do it. Other countries have done. For instance, the East Asian countries, which are almost similar position that India was in the 80s, for instance, India and China were same position. Per capita income of India's position almost similar in 1980s, before China opened up. And today, China's per capita income is 7 times of India, and its manufacturing is almost 30% of its GDP. But India is nowhere close to that. Not only China, even Vietnam, small countries in East Asia. What went fundamentally wrong in our policy, history of our policy making? I think I would introduce a book in that context. So what is that I have learned by reading this book? I would also say, in the interest of the students, few lines. One, typically in economic discipline, those who do this macro mathematical models often those models even do not reflect the reality. And there are other folks who do really thorough empirical job, very, very granular empirical job, but they don't often do, theory or connect with the theory in that sense. So I think probably the rare piece of scholarship that you would find in this book, which bring this together, I think which is very, very rare and with the cutting edge models plus the empirical data sets. I think that's how I would introduce this book to the students. With this, I have one question to reflect, to Professor Santosh Mehrotra. Of course, Mr. Praveen Chakravarty raised many questions. One question that would be worth, thinking about, not only for this platform, but otherwise in general, which is, this is a concern among economists, as you know, Professor, of say, starting with Danny Radrick from Harvard Kennedy School. He clearly says that the global south reached a level, it is very difficult for countries to move, industrialize the way we thought in the 20th century. In the sense, today, most of the economies are actually witnessing some kind of deindustrialization, and India is no exception to that trend of deindustrialization, which is now proven by many academic work, including Professor Nagaraj from IDEA. What do you think? And it's going to actually getting accelerated by introduction of the premature deindustrialization. You seem to be very optimistic, so I was wondering to reflect on this question. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Kalai. So I will respond to the point that you made, but I've also first to clarify so that people don't walk away from this room misunderstanding the argument that Praveen was making. You see, Praveen made the following argument that every additional growth rate or GDP growth rate creates less and less jobs in the non-farm sector over time. That's what the data is suggesting. And his broad point is correct. What he didn't dwell on is why this is the case. It has rather little to do with AI, by the way. Because unfortunately, the term AI is beginning to is attempting to capture everything that's happening in the space of Industrial Revolution 4 technologies. Industrial Revolution 4 technologies consist of the following range of technologies. And AI is only one element of it, I have to explain to you. What are the IR4 technologies? One is 3D printing. A second is blockchain. A third is robotics and automation. And then you have AI. Now, given this range of technologies that we are talking about, somehow AI, the term AI is used as a word to encapsulate all these 4 types of technologies. Please try and appreciate that AI is going to impact, as far as India is concerned, India's exports of IT software. And that's it. Mainly the impact will be there. The impact is not going to be, felt across the economy as much as is believed to be. I know there are people who are nodding their head in disagreement. We can engage in a dialogue about this. The fact of the matter is, there is somehow a belief that there is so much use of technology and labor power that's happening in our economy, which involves the possibility of replacement, that AI is going to cause massive shocks. The fact of the matter, please appreciate, the world has seen 4 industrial revolutions. This is the 4th one, okay? Every industrial revolution destroyed some jobs, but it created many more jobs. And that's exactly what's going to continue to happen with the IR4 technologies across the board. Not talking about AI alone, across the board. The risks exist mainly in the most industrialized countries. We are nowhere close to that. Please try and appreciate there is plenty of potential for generating jobs. And as I was saying to you earlier, that we were generating 7.5 million new non-farm jobs when we were growing at 8% per annum from 2003 to 2015. What was that strategy? Can we try and understand what that strategy is? And I think I need to explain that to you so that you don't misunderstand what Praveen was trying to say. Because please understand, Praveen was in that government just as I was. I was in the Planning Commission. That growth rate was being generated not just by the corporate sector in the non-farm corporate sector and the services corporate sector, but it was being generated by MSMEs. Many people in this room are among those who were actually creating hundreds of thousands of jobs in every state of this country because the MSMEs were thriving. The argument that I'm making in the book is that we demonstrate empirically, on the basis of data, which he recognized, that in the last 10 years or so, policy-induced shocks to the MSME sector have been such. In this state, I don't have to tell you what happened in the last 10 years to Tirupur. Tirupur is only just one example, ladies and gentlemen. Tirupur is the tip of the iceberg of the clusters that exist across this country. There are 5,500 clusters in this country. They were all generating jobs. Please try and appreciate this. We demonstrate this in the book, in chapter 7. So what I'm saying, in other words, is the following. That if you generate if you generate growth, which brings jobs being created by the MSME sector. Don't expect the corporates to generate many jobs because our corporate sector is, in the manufacturing in particular, is heavily capital intensive. So we don't expect it to create too many jobs. That's one reason why he was making the argument. Second is that we have to appreciate that the only jobs that the IT sector creates in the software and global capability centers are for highly skilled people, very highly skilled people. But as I was demonstrating to you earlier, because of the massification of higher education, you've got to generate millions of jobs for millions of less educated people. And that's what the MSMEs do. And on your point, you see, essentially, I've even answered your question, because I am saying that it's feasible to generate jobs if we had the right strategy. We don't have the right strategy. This government doesn't have the right strategy. And I wasn't able to elaborate what strategy we wish to follow. That's elaborated in the book. I would encourage you to have a look at what the argument in the book is. So in the interest of time, I'm going to,
Thank you, Professor. With that optimism, let me now invite Mr. Kumaraswamy to reply.
So good evening, Professor, and I would urge all the audience to go through the book. It's a fantastic book, summarizes beautifully all the arguments in the matter of labor, both demand and supply side, as well as related areas. But that's only one of the 4 factors of production. Professor, I have to disagree from now on 2 or 3 things, my analysis of things. One of which I think you touched upon regarding the government jobs. Let me give you some statistics. USA, the average civil servant's salary to the average per capita income is 1.1. Europe and UK is about 1.3. Vietnam is 0.9. China is 1.4. In India, it's 4.5:1, which means the average civil servant salary is about 4.5 times, whereas in the other countries, the average is about 1.1, world average. What does it mean? We are paying 4 times the market rate to the government servants. I'll just give an example. Just last week only I was in a school where the person who was teaching 1st to 3rd standard was getting a salary of 1.1 lakh. That is a dual management school where a lot of 7 government school government teachers and 10 private sector teachers. The best of private sector teacher other than headmisters was 30,000. So what does it mean? A person who's teaching first to third standard is getting 1.1 lakh, but the person who's teaching this one is getting 30,000. My argument is that the government is absorbing too much of resources to create too few jobs. Let me translate it to what it can do. If only India paid only the highest of all these countries 1.5, then the government would be occupying at least about 4 to 4.5 crores people additionally, state and center together. Today we have judges, 22 judges per million, whereas US has 150. Euro has 220. Some other country has 300. The recommended is 330 for our density population. Our police force is on par with Uganda, 95 per million, whereas the recommended is about 300, 330 as UN, this one. So this is one factor which needs to be tackled. We have problems at both ends. We do not compensate the higher echelon of people properly. They are very poorly, they are heavily underpaid. Because we have divorced at both ends the compensation from the market. That's point number one. Number two is, Manrega. And of course, you are also part. Can I take 3 minutes? And he was also a part of the committee which, designed the Manrega. The market was functioning with some kind of equilibrium, but you come with a huge intervention, 1/3 the market size, with levels which are at least about 60 to 70% more than the prevailing informal market rates there. Of course, formal industry used to pay the rate which is determined by Minimum Wages Act. But the essential difference is, other than in Tamil Nadu, in none of the other states, people work for 8 hours. They work for 4 hours. Here is a guy who's getting 336, which is the average for 4 hours work, which is 90 rupees. Vis-a-vis 8 hours work, he gets about 240, which is 30 rupees in informal sector. Of course, formal sector pays for 8 hours, not 4 hours. So what did it do? This workers started demanding better wages, and they went to the landlord to demand extra wages. What did he say? Oh God, you got a new concubine? Please go there. I will mechanize. He mechanized like crazy. Evidence? Escorts, which was quoting at 110 to 112 rupees in that 11, 12 years, is quoting today at 4,000 rupees adjusted basis. Courtesy MNREGA, courtesy the willingness to mechanize by the farmers at a rapid pace. So, how did it affect the small scale industries? The informal sector, which in India delivers 85% of the jobs and 44% of value addition. Sir, I cannot afford what you want, so please search your own jobs. And what did the employee himself do? He can't work one day at 100 rupees per hour rate, another day at 30 rupees per hour rate. Very difficult for anybody to motivate himself. And this, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why labor market in India has got corrupted by this MNREGA. So systematically from 2004 onwards, the government has interfered in the free functioning of the market. First with labor and MNREGA, land acquisition, NGT, and then inflation control, and then of course GST, because GST has another problem. I don't know why we are making so much of it. 60% of the world's employment is generated in the informal sector. Even in US, it's 56%. GST, which was, they thrive by tax arbitrage. And you put GST and brought them to the formal fold, their profitability has vanished, their wages have skyrocketed, they are not able to create jobs. This, in my opinion, are the 2 or 3 factors. And of course, land is a very, very sad story. If at all you wanted a Hitlerian kind of act, it was the Apprentice Act before. Terrible it is. And land acquisition will, more or less match it, in my opinion. With the result, I'll tell you, I have reviewed another book after reviewing his book. The lowest rate of land acquisition in India in any state is higher than the highest rate in Netherlands. You can imagine. It takes 7 days, rather, this is an actual instance. It took 7 days for a guy who wanted to set up a coating paper plant to manufacture 4 times India's annual consumption. 7 days, a marshy land of 5,000 fishermen. This is my personal experience. In Vietnam, one of the land allotted was not suitable to me. I wanted one more. At 8 o'clock dinner, he said, sir, wait for one more day, I'll give you one. Next day morning, 8 o'clock, he finds me one other suitable land. In India, a prominent group, perhaps the biggest in the manufacturing sector in India, he pays everything, all this analysis and the environmental analysis, pay the compensation, gets it registered through the registrars, but it takes 17 years for him to get possession of the land. You think any entrepreneur will be enthused to stay back in India and invest? These are the factors in my opinion. Of course, this land matter is beyond the purview of the books. MNREGA he could have covered, and I rest my case. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Kumaraswamy. Want to respond to 2 minutes?
Yeah. Let me just very briefly respond to Dr. Kumaraswamy. With all due respect, he's a good friend of mine, and
So I must confess, they have been arguing for last 2 days actually. There's a lot to say.
But it's it's very important that you understand where he's coming from and what the nuance of my argument is. First, let me deal with the Manrega argument, because I'll loop back to the argument about how much higher the Sarkari workers' wages are. So on Manrega, essentially the argument that Dr. Kumar is making is that artificially the intervention of Manrega has raised rural wages, and that's the main reason why the landlord can't find workers. What the bigger picture that he's missing is the following, which was essentially the argument I was making, which was the foundation of what I was saying earlier on from there. It is the following. From 2004, when Manrega came into existence, and I ran the Manrega program, let me assure you, I was head of the Rural Development Division. From that point, after the intervention, yes, it raised open market rural wages. It was essential to raise rural wages, because they were at 40 rupees and 50 rupees. They were way below living wage in rural areas. A woman got 40 rupees, the man got 50 rupees. I'm talking about 20 years ago. But because non-farm jobs were growing, despite the existence of Manrega work, millions of workers were leaving agriculture across this whole country. Why? They were not being held back by Manrega. So what answer does Dr. Kumar have to that? The point is, for 15 years in our country, millions of workers were leaving agriculture for non-farm work, because non-farm work was growing. That's the point. That non-farm work, I've demonstrated to you, has stopped growing. Because it stopped growing, millions of young, educated youngsters are actually going back to agriculture. That's what I was arguing. So the argument, in other words, you have to appreciate is that Manrega is giving a minimum wage to people who, for a very limited period of time. Very limited period of time. They don't have full-time work. They can go and work elsewhere. And I have to sort of answer this Sarkari, because we middle-class people have this obsession that, Sarkari babus are paid too much. Acha. If your average wage for those in the private sector are stagnating for 12 years, and if the Sarkari person is paid 1.5 or 3 or 4 times, why are you surprised? Because there is a historical basis for that Sarkari wage. And because non-farm jobs in the private sector are not growing, so why would you expect? So what you're not appreciating is that if the non-farm sectors, if the wages for most people in the private sector were growing, then this differential wouldn't be what you are expecting. You know, what you're finding. So this is an artificial situation created by the fact that non-farm jobs are not growing. Yes, I agree with you that the highly qualified are not being paid enough. I agree with you there. That's a problem to be solved by the 8th Pay Commission. But that doesn't mean that you're going to reduce the wages of those. You have to also answer, address the following question, last sentence, that 89% of all Sarkari workers are in Group C and D. Now, please appreciate that the police constable is Group C. And that's a good thing. You have to have police constables. If you don't have enough police constables, who's going to do the traffic police? You don't have enough traffic police. I know you have issues about corruption and all that. We can handle that, but you don't have enough policemen in your own state. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Professor. Now may I invite Mr. Giridhar Gopal to reflect this.
Yeah, I also don't want to go out of this room without any answer. I've got something. I'm responsible for a company which manufactures 2 products. One is cutting tool, which is a manufacturing company what we run, and also to help the other manufacturing companies to flourish. The other company, other division of mine makes auto components for farm sector. So perfectly qualified to question this to Professor. One is, compared to 10 years ago, we have 1/4 of the employees producing higher turnover, better profitability, highest quality. And that's not with AI, without AI. I know. Yeah, that's it. And then with regard to the other component, you said, okay, farm sector, what can we do? We're making components for farm sector. Everybody is doing it. It's a seasonal business. Suddenly, monsoon goes off. 4 months, there's no business for farm sector. So what can I invest on it? We don't know what's going to happen. If it's industry-oriented, we can have a dialogue. What can I have a dialogue with them? It's not possible. So how do we handle this situation? With the AI coming in, you made a point that's more to do with other sectors. In manufacturing, a lot of places, AI is going to replace jobs. There's no answer. It's inevitable for us. Okay, we are very sad with people. Very sad that it's going to happen. Without doing that, for one question, only one sentence I'll do it. We are forced to compete with China. China has got all the raw materials in their place. All that I have to compete with is operational cost. Then where do I reduce them? And if it's global manufacturing or Indian manufacturing, today, originally we thought we'll prevent China to sell in India. But today that's all gone. Chinese product come in, we have to compete with it to exist. Therefore, there is no way, and the answer, Professor, I'm not as expert as you. The question is, how do we go about it? I have a constant pressure from every circle to say, increase a job. How do I increase a job? To make whether to answer the investors as to the customers. That's the point.
Thank you, Mr. Giridhar Gopal. Now let me open up. Oh, the question? Oh, okay. So thought to the audience. This is a question. So should I read out the question? Is defense production not manufacturing? Is defense production not manufacturing? If manufacturing did not create jobs, how is it that we have 500 GCCs created in the engineering sector across India? No, should we collect a set of questions? And
up to you. I'm in your hands. Okay, so I don't know who's asked that question, but let me just respond. You have 2 questions there, actually. One is defense production not manufacturing? Well, the short answer is, of course, it's manufacturing, and defense production has grown. But the fact of the matter is, defense production, by definition, is highly capital intensive. Like a lot of our, engineering industry, corporate industry, manufacturing is highly capital intensive, highly import intensive, doesn't generate a lot of jobs. So don't expect defense production to actually generate a lot of jobs. We are here to discuss what is the kind of manufacturing that will create jobs. I am not for a moment suggesting that defense production should not happen. It must happen. Why must it happen? The reasons for that are very different, because we want to reduce international vulnerability to international threats, meaning a Trump comes along and he says, no, we will not give you X, Y, or Z. Or Russia comes along and says, we won't give you X, Y, and Z. No, we cannot have that. That's why we must have both defense R&D and defense manufacturing. Point 2, let's just go back to the previous one. GCC, yeah, so on GCC is not manufacturing. GCC is all in the space of either accounting, legal services, or in R&D. GCCs are not in manufacturing. Who calls GCCs manufacturing? They're not in manufacturing. In any case, the bottom line about GCCs doing, where they're doing R&D, for instance, for Barclays, for Microsoft, what have you, the IP is held elsewhere. Do you want to do R&D for your own country, or you don't want to do R&D? That's the problem. The problem is Indian corporates, as a proportion of GDP, India spends 0.65% of GDP on R&D as a whole, compared to a China which spends 2.5% and Korea which spends 4%. We cannot, and it hasn't, this 0.65 has not even grown over the last 20 years. 0.1, 0.2. 2/3 of all R&D expenditure in our country is by the government. The corporates are not doing it. Not even, TCS, Infosys are not even doing it. There are just, Tata for EVs, Mahindra for EVs. There's precious little R&D going on. If great R&D was going on in our country, we would be a massive manufacturing innovator. We are not an innovator.
So should we open the floor to the questions from the audience? No, only these questions.
I'm sure. We can wrap it so that we can have lots of questions that come online.
Okay.
How many questions should we take? You have any limit?
You guide us.
Two more questions. So we'll be brief. Each question will have 1 minute answer. Is that okay? Yes. Let's go. Maybe the next question. This is a generic question. You go next questions.
Shall I?
No. Next question, please. The book challenges the myth of large-scale poverty reduction. What does evidence suggest about poverty and wages and economic security in India? That's a question, sir.
Okay. There are two types of poverty. Okay, there's money metric poverty, which is in our country measured by consumption expenditure, and now we have data for the period up to 2011-12, which demonstrates without a shadow of doubt that between 2004 and 11-12, the absolute number of poor by the metric of money metric poverty or consumption expenditure poverty, it fell for the first time in the history of India by 140 million. The numbers of the poor fell in absolute terms by 140 million. What about 11-12 to 22-23? Because we've now finally had another consumption expenditure survey. We cannot compare 22-23 consumption expenditure survey for 11-12. So we cannot argue as the government has been arguing.
Sir, in one line, do you suggest that the poverty reduction has happened or not?
It has happened between 11-12 and 2023, but to a limited extent. The claim is that it's gone down to 5%. Fact of the matter is, what is that poverty line? First, I have to say this because there is a myth created in this country that poverty has dramatically declined. 25 crore people have been pulled out of poverty. That's a different type of poverty that's not ever been measured in this country. There are very big methodological issues. And above all, one more sentence, that the so-called decline in the numbers of the poor between 11-12 and 22-23 cannot be measured because the methodology of the 22-23 survey is different from the methodology of the 11 and 12. So you can't come to any conclusion, but conclusions are being drawn.
So the one last question, Professor. Can India realistically sustain 9% growth? What condition required to sustain that kind of growth?
Very briefly, read the book. The answers are there.
Please read the book. It's one of the most comprehensive books on the matter of labor, which is very, very essential for India. It has beautiful points. lovely. I had difference of opinion on my personal level, but that's a different thing on different matters. It's a book worth investing in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think fascinating evening. The book is available. I think you must buy and read this book. Very, very interesting. Lots of insights are available. Thank you for reaching. Thank you, Professor, for choosing MMA and doing it. Indeed, privilege. Thank you, Kalai, for leading the conversation. Kumaraswamy, as usual, grateful inputs, and I know what thought-provoking inputs were relevant to the book and really interesting. And I now request our Honorary Secretary to please step forward and do the honor of presenting a memento on behalf of MMA. Again, we give more books to only read, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, and all the viewers watched live. More than 600 viewers are watching online. Thank you so much.
Yeah.